Dark Side of the Moon. Great album. Now, we can always tell that the year has begun when Omega has dropped their annual Speedy Tuesday. And objectively, some years are better than others. I mean, I remember the Canopus Gold 321 CK2915 Black Onyx dial. Without question, it's my favorite launch in recent memory. Even now, years later, if I ever won the lottery, this is the watch I would go after. Absolutely beautiful. And this year, Omega giving us a rehash of the Apollo 8 Dark Side of the Moon, with a few technical improvements and a big price increase. If you got the metatextual layering to the song at the beginning of the video, it makes a lot more sense. But it got me thinking, instead of just talking about the technical specifications, what has changed in the little Saturn V rocket on the subdial, why not share why the Dark Side of the Moon is significant, why it is one of my favorite modern Speedmasters. I'm talking about the previous generation, not this one, the one that you can still find at retail. The universe of Speedmasters is vast. There are more variations of this watch than there are people on this earth. And there are few that truly stand out far better than the rest. Because Omega has this obsession with, I don't know how best to describe it, kitschifying their Speedmasters. Kitsch basically means that it's a design that is eccentric, that's done in an uncalled for way. They often overstep their mark, playing way too loosely with all the heritage and the background, the different NASA missions, you get what I mean. So where some models like the Ed White, the CK2998, the Speedmaster 57, these are tasteful, they are reserved, they are not too out there. And an example like the Silver Snoopy, we can agree it has quite a playful element attached, but we can also agree that it's one that integrates well with the whole NASA award and the story behind it. The Speedmaster Ultraman is another good example of a piece that rides this line well. It's not too playful, but also charismatic. But the vast majority of these special edition, limited edition, anniversary Speedmasters, they go way too far. You know, Buzz Aldrin's footprints on the dial, astronaut motifs, a cameo of Apollo on the case back. It just gets more and more kitsch. I think, truth be told, there are maybe 15 to 20 substantial Speedmasters that are absolutely worth your time. They bring something different to the table, they experiment with their movements, they offer great colorways, and they feel very focused. And the Dark Side of the Moon, the DSOTM, is one of those substantial pieces. It's always been one of my favorites. Why? Just look at it. The Speedmaster, the space watch, all black, with subtle yellow accents. I mean, beyond tech specs and aesthetics, how cool is that? Why more watch brands don't play with black and yellow, I do not understand. I will never understand, and it's a trend that I want to see happen. But then it's the speciality of the Dark Side of the Moon. It's the many asterisks beyond just being a Speedmaster. Racing dial with hash marks, applied plots, a 70s chronograph hand, three-dimensionality, how the dial and its movement have been integrated. The moon texture on this piece is such a great, elaborate feature, as if Grand Seiko had a hand in getting it right. And it's inspired, seeing how it blends with the movement, front and back. But there are even more details to this piece that have sadly been forgotten, like the fully loomed tachymeter bezel insert and the crown, something that's now missing on the modern release. And we also can't forget that the case is ceramic. And its size at 44mm, it's a deal breaker for a lot of people, I can understand that. But visually, an all-black watch would wear smaller on the wrist. And with the depth, the tone, the three-dimensionality, applied elements, and with the minutiae everywhere, the larger size lets you enjoy it more. So the root of my argument and the reason why I enjoy it so much, it's not your typical Speedmaster. Obvious, right? All the nuance, the blend of moon with movement, the case material, the luminosity. To me, it feels far more organic as a piece of design. You know, I'm getting hippy-dippy here. But it doesn't feel like something that's manufactured. When you consider the materials chosen and everything that encompasses it, there is less of a manufactured feel to it and something more otherworldly. It could be mistaken for a piece of meteorite or a piece of moon rock. And this previous generation of the watch is such a solid design because of it. There is a depth to this particular Speedmaster that I don't think any other model has ever matched. But in typical modern Omega fashion, with their play and their kitschness, they have attached a grade 5 titanium Saturn V rocket that's been laser etched on the sub-seconds dial. You know, where the watch was already riding a line very nicely of being fun and playful, but also serious and well designed. They've taken what was an intriguing case study of an inspired design, and they've pushed it into the realms of their many other eccentric Speedmasters. And with a watch like the Dark Side of the Moon, it just wasn't necessary. This watch is pretty flawless the way it is. You know, it just bugs me, because we know that it's an Apollo 8 watch and that it's referencing the Dark Side of the Moon. Do we really need a rocket ship on the dial to just further emphasize it? It's the same as the 007 branding we've seen on previous models. It also should be mentioned that it comes equipped with a rubber strap and a deployant clasp, a nice update over the previous. And besides the Saturn V rocket, the watch looks great. It's really interesting how they've toned down the heads of the screws, how they've softened the color of the mechanism behind the dial, how they've kept a lot of those yellow accent colors. Questionable choice, but I think the tachymeter script in yellow looked a bit better, had a bit more congruence between its dial and the other elements. Now, apart from the egregious price increase, the main improvement is the Metas 3869 caliber, coaxial, master chronometer certified, typical fashion, brilliant movement. It's basically a 3861 with custom bridges attached, a few tweaks. I have to ask the question on a technical sense, does this piece incorporate the spy rate system that Omega debuted last year with their super racing? Omega still kills the game with their movements, and besides the pretty low power reserve of 50 hours on a manually wound watch, we can't complain about the performance of their watches. So what does this sort of release show us? This may be the future direction of the brand, where they add a lot more playful elements to their core watches, which I think many of us hope they don't. This, to me, feels like more of a novelty piece. One of their many, many novelty pieces. And we can also bear in mind that this is not a limited edition, this is a part of their lineup. Every second comment about this watch is directed at its price, which I wholeheartedly agree. Made a video a few weeks back about the concerning future of watch price increases. I'll link it in the corner of the screen. And it just bugs me about this watch and the many others that end up like this. We've seen how the Moon Swatch has become such a popular item, and this does feel like they're playing into that in some way, adding this little motif. Beyond that, it's the use of the materials. I would imagine that the use of a ceramic case done en masse would make it a far more affordable proposition, and these brands could lessen their prices of these watches and entice more people in to look at them. And what irritates me the most is that the Dark Side of the Moon, this particular example, is one of the few modern Speedmasters I could see myself owning. And every time I see a photograph of it, if I see it somewhere, guaranteed I'll be spending a lot more time looking at it, because it's a feast for the eyes. It's technical, it's interesting, it's minimal but complicated. And in this instance, it feels like they have done less and they're asking more, which is a worrisome trend that I think is going to continue over the next year or two. But even still, I really admire the Dark Side of the Moon, what it represents, how it stands out compared to the rest of their range. It is by no means simple as a design, but it is so engaging, it's captivating. I'd like to know your opinion on the Dark Side of the Moon. I know it's an enthusiast's favorite, and a lot of you have one. And there are plenty of reasons why this is such a great piece. So final thoughts, the best space analogy I could come up with was one small step too far. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and I'll see you in the next one.